know that part of the deal was you had to have sex with this guy?
I didn't know at first what was going to happen, especially that.
When most people think of Hugh Hefner, they picture silk pajamas, glamorous parties, and the famous Playboy mansion filled with celebrities and models. But behind the sparkling image was a world of shadows few outsiders ever saw. The basement of Hefner's mansion was said to hold more than just bottles of wine and party supplies. Hidden away beneath the luxury estate were vaults, tunnels, and locked rooms that stored secrets darker than anyone could have imagined. According to former girlfriends, employees, and lawsuits filed after Hefner's death in 2017, the basement was filled with hidden cameras, thousands of videotapes, and even FBI files documenting investigations into Playboy. Some women claimed that the tapes captured guests without their knowledge, and that Hefner kept them as a way to maintain power and control. For decades, rumors swirled that celebrities and powerful figures were caught on these recordings, creating a collection that was both dangerous and untouchable. Lawsuits in 2022 revealed that more than 10 women came forward saying they had been filmed without consent, and some of those videos had been stored for years in the basement. These discoveries changed the way people saw Hefner. No longer just the smiling figure who represented a fantasy lifestyle, he began to appear as someone who used charm and wealth to mask troubling secrets. The idea of the basement as a hidden vault of scandal gave new meaning to the phrase, "if walls could talk." What had once been seen as a playground for adults was now revealed to be a place where serious crimes might have been hidden away for decades. This darker picture made people question not only Hefner himself, but also the culture that had celebrated him for so long. When most people think of Hugh Hefner, the image that comes to mind is of silk pajamas, parties with Hollywood stars, and the famous Playboy mansion filled with glamour and charm. The mansion was promoted as a place of excitement and luxury, but behind the bright lights and famous guests, there were stories of darker realities hidden below the surface. The basement of Hefner's mansion became the center of rumors and shocking discoveries after his death in 2017. Reports began to surface that it was more than just a storage space. According to lawsuits, documentaries, and confessions from former girlfriends, the basement held vaults of videotapes, hidden camera footage, and private files on celebrities and political figures. These recordings were allegedly made without the consent of many people, turning the basement into a place of secrecy and fear. Some claimed that Hefner used the tapes as a way of controlling others, keeping their reputations in his hands. For years, these rumors stayed in whispers, but after Hefner passed away, more women and former employees spoke out. They described hidden passageways, secret rooms, and even connections to other houses through underground tunnels. What was once seen as a glamorous playground for adults was now painted as a disturbing and controlling environment. The idea that the basement of the mansion might have held the power to ruin lives and careers changed. The way the world remembered Hugh Hefner, he was no longer just the face of Playboy, but also a man accused of building an empire on secrets, manipulation, and control. Hugh Hefner was born in Chicago in 1926 into a conservative family. His parents were strict Methodists who raised him with strong rules and little affection. Hefner later said that the lack of warmth at home shaped his desire for attention and love as an adult. As a boy, he showed early signs of creativity and independence. He started a school newspaper, drew cartoons, and even created his own comic books. But underneath his charm was a child who struggled with loneliness and a need to be noticed. After finishing high school, Hefner joined the U.S. Army during World War II, working as a writer and cartoonist for military newspapers. When the war ended, he studied psychology and sociology, and even took art classes that helped him develop his interest in publishing. In 1949, he married his first wife, Mildred Williams, and they had 2 children together. But their marriage was troubled from the start. Mildred admitted she had been unfaithful while Hefner was away, which deeply hurt him and shaped his future views on relationships. Seeking escape, Hefner threw himself into his career. He worked at magazines like Esquire, learning about publishing and the business side of media. These experiences inspired him to create something bold and new. a magazine that combined lifestyle, culture, and sexuality in a way that had never been done before. The strict, cold environment of his childhood gave birth to the exact opposite in adulthood, a life filled with pleasure, openness, and rebellion against traditional values. In 1953, Hefner took a big risk. He gathered about $8,000 from family and investors to publish the first issue of Playboy. The magazine featured Marilyn Monroe on the cover, and it sold over 50,000 copies, making it an instant success. Playboy was more than just photographs of women. It combined interviews, articles, fiction, and commentary on culture. It became a symbol of freedom and rebellion during a time when America was still very conservative. Hefner presented himself not just as a publisher, but as a lifestyle icon. He wore silk pajamas, smoked pipes, and promoted the idea of a sophisticated bachelor life filled with luxury and women. Playboy clubs soon opened across the country, where women known as bunnies entertained guests in stylish uniforms. For many young men, Playboy represented success and confidence. The magazine interviewed famous figures like Martin Luther King Jr., Muhammad Ali, and John Lennon, making it seem intellectual as well as provocative. But while Hefner built a public image of fun and freedom, behind the scenes there were already troubling signs. Some employees and girlfriends described him as controlling, needing everything his way. He was not just a businessman, but someone who wanted to shape how people thought about sex, relationships, and even morality. Playboy was marketed as liberation, but it also created debates about whether Hefner was empowering women or exploiting them. By the 1960s, Hefner had built an empire, and the Playboy Mansion became a cultural landmark. Yet the foundations of that empire would later be questioned as more stories about his behavior and secrets began to surface. The Playboy Mansion in Los Angeles became the ultimate symbol of Hefner's world. Purchased in 1971, it had 29 rooms, a zoo license, a famous swimming pool with a grotto, and, of course, the secret basement. Celebrities from Frank Sinatra to Tony Curtis attended parties there, while young women lived as playmates under Hefner's strict rules. To outsiders, it looked like paradise. Beautiful women, endless parties, and luxury at every corner. But for the women inside, life was not always glamorous. Former girlfriends and residents described strict curfews, surveillance cameras, and pressure to please Hefner in every way. Some were given weekly allowances, but had to follow rules about appearance and behavior. If they disobeyed, they risked being kicked out. Hefner's control extended even to the smallest details, from what the women wore to when they could leave the house. The basement of the mansion was said to contain hidden rooms where recordings of parties and encounters were stored. Guests often did not realize they were being filmed, creating a library of secret footage. For Hefner, the mansion was more than a home, it was his kingdom. Every detail reflected his desires, from the decor to the staff who managed daily life. The mansion appeared to be a place of freedom, but in reality, it was tightly controlled by one man who demanded loyalty. Many women later described feelings of isolation, saying they were caught in a world where Hefner's word was final. To the public, the mansion was a dream. To those inside, it often felt like a trap. Hefner's relationships were always complicated. After divorcing his first wife Mildred, he became known for having multiple girlfriends at the same time. He often kept groups of women living with him in the mansion, with one main girlfriend given higher status. While some women said they enjoyed the lifestyle, others later described it as controlling and degrading. Hefner reportedly required the women to participate in scheduled group activities, and many said they felt pressured into sexual situations they did not want. In 1989, Hefner married playmate Kimberly Conrad, and they had 2 sons together, but the marriage ended in divorce a decade later. In 2012, Hefner married again, this time to Crystal Harris, who was 60 years younger than him. Harris later spoke about how isolated she felt, describing the mansion as more like a prison than a home. She said Hefner kept hidden drawers filled with drugs that were often used at parties. His control was not just emotional, but also financial. Many women said they were dependent on him for money, housing, and even their futures, while the outside world saw him as a man surrounded by beauty and luxury. Insiders said he was deeply insecure and used his power to control those closest to him. His relationships were less about love and more about maintaining dominance, something that reflected the same need for control seen in the hidden tapes and basement vaults. The world of Playboy was not just glamorous, it was also marked by tragedy. One of the most shocking events was the murder of Playmate Dorothy Stratton in 1980 by her estranged husband. Stratton's death exposed the dangers behind the fantasy image Playboy promoted. In 1975, Hefner's longtime secretary and friend Bobby Arnstein took her own life after facing legal trouble connected to drugs, leaving a note that hinted at pressures from the Playboy world. In the 1990s and 2000s, lawsuits accused Hefner and Playboy of covering up sexual misconduct at the mansion. Several women said they were assaulted during parties, and some claimed drugs were given to them without consent. Former employees spoke of pig nights, where sex workers were brought in and secretly filmed. These scandals painted a disturbing picture of what went on behind closed doors, while Hefner publicly defended himself, saying Playboy represented freedom. The growing number of accusations made it harder to see him as just a cultural icon. Even the FBI investigated him in the 1960s over charges of obscenity, showing that his empire was controversial from the beginning. For decades, Hefner balanced on the line between admired and accused, loved and hated. His ability to hide scandals was linked to his power, wealth, and the secrets stored in the basement vaults. But as time passed, more of these secrets began to emerge, weakening the carefully built image of the Playboy King. The basement of the Playboy Mansion became one of the most mysterious parts of Hefner's world. Former workers and girlfriends said it contained private rooms, recording equipment, and storage for thousands of tapes. These tapes allegedly showed celebrities, politicians, and guests at parties, often without their knowledge. The basement was also said to connect to secret tunnels leading to the homes of stars like Jack Nicholson and Warren Beatty. Though some of these claims remain unproven, lawsuits filed after Hefner's death in 2017 added more credibility to the rumors. Over 10 women testified that they were secretly filmed during encounters at the mansion. With the tapes kept in locked vaults underground, former employees claimed Hefner used these recordings as insurance, protecting himself from scandal by holding the reputations of others in his hands. Some compared it to blackmail, saying no one dared to challenge him because they feared what footage he might release. This turned the basement into more than just storage. It was a weapon. To the women who lived in the mansion, the knowledge that they might have been filmed without consent was terrifying. For decades, the basement remained hidden. But after Hefner's death, investigators and lawsuits revealed just how dark its purpose may have been. It symbolized the side of Hefner that the public never saw. Not the charming host in silk pajamas, but a man who built his empire on secrets, control, and the fear of exposure. By the 2000s, Playboy was no longer the powerful brand it once was. The rise of the internet, changing attitudes about sexuality, and criticism of Hefner's lifestyle weakened the empire. The magazine's sales fell, and the mansion itself started to lose its shine. Hefner grew older and more frail, appearing less often in public. In 2017, he died at the age of 91 in the Playboy Mansion. His death sparked a flood of tributes, with some praising him as a cultural pioneer who broke taboos about sex and free expression. Others, however, remembered the darker stories. The lawsuits, the testimonies of former girlfriends, and the investigations into hidden tapes made it harder to celebrate him without questioning the cost of his empire. Hefner was buried next to Marilyn Monroe, the woman whose image launched the first issue of Playboy, closing a circle in history. His legacy remains divided. To some, he is a hero of the sexual revolution. To others, he is a symbol of exploitation and secrecy. The truth may lie somewhere in between, but the revelations about the basement and what it contained made it clear that Hefner's world was far more complex and troubling than the fantasy he sold to millions. After Hefner's death, documentaries such as Secrets of Playboy and court cases brought even more disturbing stories to light. Former girlfriends, playmates, and staff shared details about drug use, emotional manipulation, and the hidden world of the mansion. Crystal Harris, His widow described feeling trapped and said Hefner kept hidden drawers of drugs used during parties.